Cooking Hope annual dinner, and that's supposed to be on February 5th, but I put that on a while ago, so I need to double check that that's the right day and time.
I think it is, Chair.
Okay. So that's February 5th at 4 o'clock, it looks like. Commissioners, any other calendaring issues?
Yes, there's the opening day of the legislative session, Freedom Rally down at the Capitol. I plan on being there. Anybody else?
I'm not there, but I will be at the ODOT Newburgh Dundee Bypass open house that's tonight, virtual. So if either of you are able to, it would be good, you know, as a refresher. Oh, Chair.
I plan on being there.
Commissioner. Okay, we'll both be there.
Okay.
Thank you.
What time does that start, Commissioner?
7?
6?
6?
I have it as 6, but
Okay, so Newburgh Dundee virtual meeting, bypass virtual meeting is at 6 o'clock tonight. And then the session starts on, is it Tuesday? I think it's Tuesday. Maybe it's Monday.
Yes.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, okay. And then is there a general time for the rally, or is it just during the day?
It's 11.
Okay.
11 to 2, I think, or 11 to 3.
Okay. Ken, Christian, any other, Ken?
Yes, I just wanted to quickly, it falls under calendaring. One thing that is typically on the agendas that we haven't scheduled in quite some time is department updates. And so I've been working on putting together a schedule so we can resume and start having, at least on a weekly basis, have a department head come and provide a 10 to 15 minute update on things that are happening in the department, and looking to have the first update start next Thursday. So I've already been talking to department heads and shared some tentative scheduling, so that way they have it on their calendars as well. But just wanted to make sure the board was okay with proceeding with that.
Sounds great.
And then, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I saw everybody's nodding their head, so sorry, I didn't mean to speak over anyone. So on top of that, what I'm also doing, so that way we don't have duplicate calendars and it's easy for everyone to find, we have the work session calendar that we post to the website. We're going to make some edits to that to include both work session topics and department updates. So then that way we'll have that clearly scheduled out over the next several months. So it's ease of access for anybody who may have a particular interest in hearing an update from a department, and then also for the department heads to easily track when they're scheduled to give that, when they're scheduled to come before the board and give an update. So we'll be making that change to that calendar, or that addition to the calendar.
Sounds great. Christian, did you have anything? No? Okay. Okay. That brings us to public comment, and we have received volumes of public comment. So thank you for everyone who has weighed in on items in today's agenda. I think we were still getting public comment as of 5 minutes ago. So we will go through and make sure that those all are submitted for next week. We typically have a cutoff of 10 a.m. on the day of the meeting, so, or 9 a.m., excuse me. So we'll go through and make sure those are rolled into next week's public comment. And that brings us to our work session. So I'm going to open the work session, and this is a review and discussion of 2022 board strategic plan and goal setting. And I believe we have a guest joining us, John Morgan. And Ken, do you want to kind of kick off the summary of why we're doing this?
I can do that. And I'm looking to see if John's here. I'm not seeing his name. So what could, all right, so taking a step back. So we've had this work session on the calendar for having a discussion about doing some strategic plan and goal setting. Oh, here comes John. And in an effort to help kind of, you know, because this is something new, that the board has not done in the past. I thought it'd be important. I reached out to COG and to find someone to come in and assist and help with facilitating the discussions. And then I reached out to John Morgan, and he has been in contact with each of you and talking about what this could look like in the process. I just kind of wanted to start off with the, doing the introduction, and then I'll kind of hand it off to John and just kind of talk about, or a recommendation about a goal for today. I'm really thinking, because admittedly this week it's been a very busy week. That's probably an understatement. And I would have liked to have been a lot more prepared this morning to get more in depth and have that discussion. And what I'd like to suggest or recommend is maybe we have kind of a conversation more at that 35,000 foot level around what the process looks like, and also look at some possible future dates of continuing the work session or discussion, that we could come back in and maybe get more into the weeds or have more substantive discussions on some of the areas that the board would like to talk about. But I was kind of hoping today we could just kind of set the stage, have that conversation, talk at the 35,000 foot level, talk about discussions that you had with John, and then we can kind of chart a course moving forward after that discussion.
I think that's a good strategy. Commissioners, are you good with that? Okay. John, welcome. We can see you, and hopefully we can hear you here too. So
Hope you can.
yes, we can. Okay.
Hope you can. Yay. Yay. Yeah, I got a little frantic there trying to find the Zoom link and make it work and all this morning. So
It's happened
Sorry.
to all of us.
Oh yeah.
yeah, I know. I have clients that use the Google infrastructure, the Microsoft infrastructure, GoToMeeting. I mean, all of this, and then here we are in Zoom, and I just get frazzled. There's got to be some singular system, like, oh, we all meet in person again. That'll come. We can hope for that. We can definitely hope for that. And if we met in person in something like this, obviously it's a lot easier, because we'd be basically sitting together, hopefully breaking bread together, and enjoying that kind of conversation for a discussion like this, which is really important. And I'd be able to have various chart packs up and taking notes and diagrams and all kinds of things to help us along, which maybe we can arrange at some point that we can do that. But I definitely agree with Ken, and know that your agenda today, your regular agenda, is fraught with things that could be less than happy discussions. And yet we want this kind of retreat discussion to be happy and productive. So I'd like to really walk through quickly what my understanding is of what the intent for this work is, and then hear from you so that we can hopefully reach some agreement on this. Part of doing this kind of thing is I look at it in terms of making sure that it focuses on doing the most good. In fact, I ask the question often on this kind of thing, why are we doing this? And a lot of it comes down to making good decisions. And I heard from someone once that the definition of a good decision that was really great in the political environment or in our public service environment was doing the most good for the most people for the longest period of time. And I've really taken that to heart, and I try to use that in these kind of discussions. The most good for the most people for the longest period of time. And understanding what that most good is important to why we're here. The idea of doing any kind of strategy is to look at and reach agreement on that which really needs to be done to serve those you are serving. It is, what is it that the citizens of Yamhill County really, really need you to most be working on to serve broadly for the entire county, meeting those greatest needs? That can be everything from projects to programs to policy to your own internal structures, whatever it is. But it's laying things on the table and then reaching some agreement on which is most important, where those priorities rest, and then on how to achieve them. I do this work most often with city councils, which are a different animal, of course, than a state structured county government, such as Yamhill County, where all three of you are quite independent from each other and from the department heads, which is a different environment than some counties have moved to, and also almost every city. So it creates an interesting political and operational environment. Part of what this is about isn't, okay, I like to think of it as how do you best use resources? You only have so many resources. Those resources are money, staff, which really is available staff time, and your own time and energy and where you want to put your time. What is it you want on your agendas in the ensuing year or so? What are those things, those decisions and projects you want brought back to you by staff, where the expectations are? Essentially laying out what you want staff to work on to a great extent, as well as yourselves. Ken needs direction. He needs to know that as he is leading the county staff and all the departments and their functions, that it's consistent with what your expectations are, and that he can count on that. It's kind of a mutual accountability when you come down to it, where you're saying, these are the things that we expect of you and staff. These are the major projects we expect in the next year or two. And then he can say to you, yes, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're working to accomplish those projects. And you judge him based on his capability to follow through on those things. But also it gives you a framework to think, if something new comes along, say a big natural disaster, or all of a sudden Ford Motors says, we want to build a new, all electric truck plant in Carlton or something that's going to consume huge amounts of time and resources, that you want to pursue that, but you know what you need to set aside. You've got a framework for saying, okay, if we're going to do that, what is it that we're going to take off the plate, knowing that we don't have the resources of our own time and that of our staff in the ensuing year to do that, much less budget, perhaps. Also part of this is recognizing that if I was there, I would draw an iceberg, and that iceberg would have the water line, of course, at about the 70% mark, with only about 30% above the water. And you all know this kind of analogy. That 70% below the water is just doing the work of county government. It's what your staff is doing all the time. It's what the deputies are doing. It's what all your social service staff is doing. It's all of your support staff, just the day-to-day business that keeps county government running, serving the citizens as they expect it. And if you take on projects that erode into that 70%, that can be a real problem. Basically, what we want to do is find those projects that can stay above that. I say about 20% of that is your high-level policy work. It's what the public sees and reads, and what they watch as they watch your meetings, and it's where you're out there as the elected leaders of the county, doing the county's business in this very public way, which should run at a 30,000 to 100,000 foot level, leaving the 5,000 foot in the weeds for Ken and his staff to a great degree. That leaves that 10% between the 70% and the 20%, and that 10% is where you overlap. It's the work of you interfacing directly with Ken and through Ken with his staff. It's where you're working on budget. It's where you're doing major things like comprehensive plan updates, or those things where there's a keen relationship between the elected and decision-making officials, yourselves, and your staff. We want to find those things in this effort, I hope, that really you, all three of you, can focus in on over the next year or two, and where you agree, yes, these are the things that we need to do, or we need to address. This process is not the place to debate those things. I mean, given I've heard from all of you, increasing communications channels with the citizens of the county is an important thing. But also I hear from you, and the consultant addresses the elephant in the room. That's part of my job. and asking those questions that otherwise might not be asked, but you disagree on what that means in terms of communication channels, in terms of what the communication is, who makes those decisions, what kind of things are said, where it goes, how it gets out. But you all agree communication with the citizens needs to be improved. I think that's probably a very commendable goal to talk about doing that, but in this process, not fleshing out the details, trying to stay away from those things if possible, at least agreeing we're going to put this on our agenda down the road and work in earnest on it and ask our staff to help us with it and to get somewhere. Let me just tell you, in my conversations with you, and then I'm going to just open it up for our conversation about, in fact, I want to leave that right there. That's my framework of thinking about how this process can best serve you. But let me ask all three of you, as well as Ken, am I off base in that? And where might you also want to do it? Why do you want to engage in this? What do you want to get out of it? Madam Chair, let me just turn it back to you, and let's have a conversation on that point.
Sure. Thank you, John. That was very helpful. Commissioners, if you want me to just kind of kick it off, I'll describe a little bit about my expectations for this process. We haven't really had, and it's really difficult when we only talk one day a week, right, for 2 or 3 hours. So it's just really hard to have a cohesive strategy, or if you have thoughts that we need to change internal structure to make the function of county government more efficient or more effective, we really don't have an avenue for doing that in a constructive way. So that's why I think this will be helpful. I also think that we are fragmented a bit because of our liaison duties. So we don't always bring up some of the things that are happening in those departments and discuss them in a way that might identify, common need, which is part of the communication issue, right? So really, what I would like to see is a robust conversation about how we can maybe what our goals are and how we can more efficiently deliver those services, or if we need to bring in additional help to do that. And that is regarding the internal structure of how we operate to a certain degree. With regard to a communications need or a communications PIO or something like that, I see every other government entity that manages a budget our size, that has a jurisdiction of the number of people that we do, every single entity has a PIO or some sort of communication strategy internally and externally. We don't have that. So that needs to be improved. And I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. The fairgrounds is having a really hard time with a communication strategy. And as you know, for the fair, that's everything. The marketing part of that is everything. And a lot of people just don't know what's going on here. Public Works, when it comes to road projects or things that are happening after storms or this or that, they have no good way of communicating. I was going on their Facebook page trying to get information after the last storm, and it just wasn't there. And so we need to adapt to the way that people watch us and communicate and interface with county government and the services that we provide. And I don't see that we're really doing that. And obviously we're working on a new website, so that's a good step, but it's really having more of a cohesive communication strategy there. Yamco Watch, as you know, just was greatly impacted by some of the public safety jurisdictions going quote unquote dark. So there's now an important line of communication that has been lost, and whether that's going to fall to our emergency management department to kind of pick up some of that slack and answer those questions. Again, that's another communications barrier that we have. We also have other things going on, like, Ken and I have been talking about the Parks Board and the Parks Director and how things have changed with the work crew program and how that might actually be better suited somewhere else in terms of instead of under community corrections. So I just don't see that we've had a very good avenue to discuss these kinds of things, concerns, and how we can do better. Some of that came up in our ARPA discussion about our business support and our SEDCOR discussion. When we were looking at the broader picture of how much money we spend on each of these things, and are we really getting what we want out of that? Are we getting the biggest bang for the buck? So that's another issue that I have on my list to go over. I also think we're lacking in terms of a housing support specialist that can sort of work with our cities and interface with state government. So there's just a lot of things that I've identified that I think we can do a better job of, and that might mean restructuring a bit internally. But that's what I'm hoping to get out of this. Commissioners, thoughts as well? Commissioner Sterrett?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things that I shared with John and I've shared with Ken is, again, just to the point of a lot of the internal workings we've seen this past couple of years has really put a lot of stress on existing staff. I always say it's as if we can't even do the core functions of our jobs anymore because there are all these ancillary things related to COVID and those types of things. So what I would like to see, I mean, in a perfect world, you know, I can remember going to AOC meetings and seeing the commissioners from Multnomah County coming in with basically an entourage. They had policy people and they had all kinds of support. And I understand the financials around that, and that would not be possible. But I always feel like we can't really dig into some of the policy issues because we're dealing with some of the other issues. So, and to speak to Ken's job, I'm sure that it has grown so much over the last year in terms of responsibilities and time commitments. I try to look back on what it was like with our prior administrator, our first administrator, and how there was more time for interaction with the commissioners. But it's an enormous amount of work that's being put on in one person's office. So I always think about that. And again, the communications piece is big too. When we get emails from, let's say, our assessor or our clerk that are explaining different things that are going on, whether it's elections or whether it's tax time. These are things I believe people would really be interested in, and it would explain just how complicated the various departments are and just how much work they do. So I think in terms of either a PIO and or a communications tool where we can get department heads to be able to share out that information with the greater community and not just the commissioners, I would love to see folks getting more in-depth information about their county government. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Commissioner Sterrett. And John, we might be getting more specific than you were hoping for, but you know, a lot of us have put a lot of time into this, so we're just, you know, and we're also looking at having the purpose of scheduling this discussion early this year is because we have about 6 months before the next budget cycle starts. So we're trying to time it so that we can potentially adapt to the budget process over the next few months. So, Commissioner Kula, you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, definitely, and thank you. Thank you to Ken for initiating it as a strategic planning and goal setting. Thank you to John for the conversation that we had yesterday while I was pacing back and forth on my farm. It was lovely out, just so you know, or Tuesday, whatever day it was, John. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I will say that, Chair, I think that some of the discussions that I've heard and comments so far do feel like there may be more at that 10,000 foot level. If we're going to use John's analogy of 35,000 and 5,000. But I do recognize that, you know, Commissioner Sterrett has a lot of experience with communication with the public, and she can probably see gaps maybe more easily than I can. But to John's point, or his kind of opening question, you know, how I see the role of commissioners is to support the staff in providing excellent public service, right, to the community in every area that we're mandated or not mandated to do it, in a way that's financially sustainable, and then to communicate with people in the community so that they know the services, kind of going to at a maybe a higher level, communicating the services the way that Commissioner Starrett has described. But I don't feel the need right now to describe or prescribe to departments how they do that. But it's probably important, especially for the departments that don't do a monthly or a weekly newsletter to the public, for them to know that we want that to happen and we support them in communicating to the public. And I will say that for the fairgrounds, I know I support them communicating to the public, and I welcome any requests to the county commissioners for additional resources for that. I just haven't seen them yet, those particular requests, so I'll set them aside for now. I will say that I really appreciate Commissioner Bershauer's, our Chair Bershauer's, I'll get this, comments about Yamco Watch, and I've in the early discussions of asking our sheriff what that looks like, but I want to set that aside. That's clearly that we're all in support of stronger communications with the public. I do think that like agenda items that are coming up are policy discussions, right? So I don't think that we're lacking for policy discussions. One thing that Chair, you mentioned was this like department updates. And I have strived to have pertinent policy updates with every announcement period at the end of our meetings. But I do think that in terms of what our meetings look like, it might be important if we all feel like it's a priority to give that announcement time more heft. I do know that when we're at the end of a 6-hour meeting and we're all wiped out and staff needs to go to the bathroom, everybody needs to eat food, that it's hard to want to explain in depth the nuances of the conversation that I had with ODOT around the bypass. And I'm happy to, if that's a real value to the Board of Commissioners, I'm happy to support moving that or making sure that we know that this is a time when we're ready to listen and ready to share from the prior week. And then I'm going to pause and send it back, Chair, to either to you or to John or to Ken.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. John, thoughts in response?
Yeah, you know what I've observed, and you know it's no secret to anyone that the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners tends to get acrimonious once in a while, and yeah, imagine that. But the reality of this discussion just in the last 30 minutes is you all are sharing a number of things. One, obviously, is love for the county and the people of the county. I mean, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't love it. And two, is that my sense of my conversation with all of you is that you just generally agree on, 95% of everything in terms of what's important to work on, what ought to be on your agendas, those things you can work on together as a great 3-person team along with your staff. And so focusing on those kind of things and bringing them paramount out on your agenda over the next year is really what this is about. Obviously, you're all interested in some kind of better communication strategy. I heard a lot about economic development and wanting to be more proactive and much more productive as leaders and as stimulus to economic development in Yamhill County more than the ways that it has been, which I think is a great idea. And then a few other things have been brought up. I'm thinking that, as Ken said, there's no need for a huge discussion today, though I love your enthusiasm to jump into it. And I look forward to maybe jumping into it. It's one of those things, hearing from you today, I can work with Ken and hopefully give you more of a fire starter paper or something that might help provide some background information, like on communication, economic development, whatever we come up with, and we continue this conversation. My experience says that in doing this work, generally these goals are not perpetuation of existing programs, but they're new initiatives or major changes that you want to make. And that at most, somewhere between 4 and 8 is just reasonable at best to take on anything major, and you can take on much more than that. I was working with the city of Madras about 3 years ago, and they had 36 goals on their prior year's list of things they wanted to accomplish. And of course, I say, well, how many of those did you get done? And the answer was none. And the reason was they lacked total focus on deciding what was most important and directing all of their energy and resources to that. Phenomenal difference once we were able to get them honed in on just a few things to work on in terms of what actually was accomplished. And another example comes to mind. This was 2 years ago with the city of Gladstone, where going through this process, the city council realized they couldn't do anything new because they were building a new city hall, a new library, a new community center, and there were 4 department head positions that were empty and being filled at the moment with interims. And there was absolutely no capacity of the staff to take on anything new. And the council needed to be there to support the staff in doing that, which was being worked on already. So they formally said, we have no new goals this year. We're going to just hold the course. Yeah, it's this kind of thinking. I suggest, just sticking in the back of your head and thinking about where can we best use the limited resources. There are 2 choices for resources. You work within what you have, you rearrange it if you need to, and then really the third is you go and find new resources if necessary. But at least those are strategic decisions. That's what we want to get on your agenda and in your thinking in terms of thinking about that stuff. We can go into more conversation today on each of these topics if you wish. This might be a time also to bring it to a close for now and reschedule and have a deeper conversation at some point in the near future where we can spend a lot more time on these things. I am totally open to whatever the commission wants to do with that.
Thank you, John. Ken, do you have any thoughts as we're moving through this?
I don't have anything that really jumps out at the top of my head at this point. I guess it was just, again, what would the board like to do? What are you kind of envisioning as what would you like to do for a next step? Like John was suggesting, him and I, we can connect and we can put together some of that framework to help with the next steps. And how soon would we like to get something on the calendar to get back together and get more in depth with some of those areas that the board has identified?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John. And thanks, Ken. I'm wondering if the commissioner sent Ken an email with maybe 2 or 3 of our top priorities in terms of what projects we'd like to address, since too many would make it impossible to hit them all, and a list of them. And then working with John, Ken can pretty much refine what that next step would be in terms of discussion with the board and what our thoughts are on some of those, the short list of projects.
Thank you, Commissioner. John, does that work? I mean,
Well, that works great.
Okay. Yeah, I got pretty specific in mind, but I did sort of rank them in level of importance. So maybe the top 2 or 3 that we can have a more in-depth conversation on next time would be.
One of the things I will also ask Ken to look at is forecasting. What do he and his department heads see coming down the road where they know that they're going to be items that are going to take big chunks of your agenda time? That you may know it, you may not know it, but at least to know that that's going to be out there, which could limit your amount of time to work on other policy discussions. A good forecast of the workload ahead, and we can bring that back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and when we talked, Ken and I talked with Christian, I said, I'm also looking for some guidance from Ken as to, hey, this structure really isn't working very well. We probably need to change this up. So definitely a 2-way communication feed there, because sometimes that does impact our ideas that come up. So Commissioner Kula, how do you feel about that strategy of emailing in a couple ideas, maybe in level of order of importance for you?
Yeah, that sounds great to me.
Okay.
I have some thoughts, and I'll send them in, and they'll be all there'll be things that we all have to then, address on the other side. They're not just like we vote, yes, this is a priority or not.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the other thing that I would just kind of echo too is also, or just add, is, like John described, that we have a lot of things that are currently underway as well. And I can bring more, this is also, this effort and these discussions are also going to be running in parallel, because I know we have a work session scheduled for February 10th in a couple of weeks, where we have Sarah Architects is going to be coming and talking to the board while we work on the strategic capital planning for the courthouse campus area as well. So there's some parallel strategic planning and discussions that are also going to be taking place. And then of course with the Oracle Cloud ERP project that I presented, what was that, a couple of weeks ago, that's another really significant project that's also running in parallel. And then we have the continued discussions around ARPA funds. That is another area, so I think, just keeping in mind that while we're doing this, we also have in parallel a lot of these other initiatives and projects that are underway or in the early stages. They're going to be running in parallel while we also have this discussion as well.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So should we set, do you guys need more time to maybe set a date for the number 2, round 2? Or
If your next work session's February 10th, and Ken agrees, I don't see any big reason to wait.
okay, Ken, would that be okay?
Up to you.
Yeah, we can take a look at it. I know that one's going to be a pretty lengthy presentation, but we could definitely, based on how, I guess I would just leave it if the commissioners email me as suggested, and I share that with John, and if the board is okay with some flexibility, that if based on that information, I can just start putting dates on the work session calendar, and then we could have that discussion during calendaring as early as next week to say, hey, here's what, based on the feedback, and this is how much lead time I think I'm going to need to get some of that baseline info that you may want to see as part of the discussion. And then, we can reconnect and have the schedule somewhat, a little bit of flexibility in what we plug in on the calendar.
Okay, that sounds good. So commissioners, if we have our emailed information in by, let's say, a week, next Thursday, is that giving you enough time?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, okay. So we'll have that to you within a week, and then we can kind of go from there in terms of scheduling. Sound
Perfect.
good? Okay.
Good.
Thanks, John.
All right, thank you, John.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks, Ken. Chair, I was just wondering what level of detail should we be sending this in with?
Well, I was just gonna submit the whole enchilada. I mean, I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of sense for me to sort of phase it in. I'm just gonna detail everything that I'm thinking that we may do as an idea, and then I'm going to leave it to John as to how to structure that in terms of the conversation.
Okay.
The goals basically represent the agenda for the work of the county. They don't represent the details of the outcome. So if you want to put a lot of detail in to share with with everybody, that's great. But the real issue is, should this item be in the goal list, and then some level of detail on what that means and kind of thing, but not the nitty gritty so much.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I recall that John was like 3,500,000 foot level, and so that's that's what my my goals look like, that are really again directed at how our staff does the work of public service in different agencies.
Yeah, let's stay above 25,000 feet. Well, at least 10,000.
So if I submit pages of information, you're going to send it back to me?
We're just we'll archive it.
Okay. Commissioner Sterrett, does that answer your question? Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you, John.
You bet. Thank you all. Well, good work.
Okay, so if there's nothing further for our work session, we are going to close the work session and move on to department updates. It looks like we have none. The consent agenda, do I have a motion? Well, actually, before I call for the motion, I just wanted to give a shout out to Leslie Lewis. She has agreed to renewing her term on the Fair Board, and she has been, I've sat through a lot of those meetings with her. She just has, her level of knowledge is just incredible. And her attention to detail and her ideas that she has, her passion for the fairgrounds is really wonderful. So I want to thank her for her service to the county. With that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Chair.
Thank you. Motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Oops. And that brings us to old business, H. Consideration of approval of a letter of support to be submitted to the Public Health Accreditation Board for Public Health Reaccreditation. And this is continued from January 20th last week. Commissioners, I'm actually going to make a motion to move this down the agenda to the last item of other business or after other business. And the reason I'm going to do that is because there's been a lot of public testimony over this, and there's been some news lately that is regarding this particular item. And I feel like there's a lot of discussion that needs to occur before we get to the point where we can just vote on that. So out of respect for all of the public testimony, I'm going to move that we move the item H1 down to, well, I don't know if it would be I6 or I7, but move it down to the end of the agenda. Any discussion?
Chair, I would just ask, since this doesn't seem to be, I mean, it's an accreditation letter, and I see we have Dr. Manfred in the audience. Perhaps we could hear from her about why this has come before us and the history of it and what it does before we move on. So that's my before voting no, just assumption is that we can have a discussion about this, since I see that as something separate from other agenda items.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. We did hear a bit from her. We received some emails in terms of what the letter is for and the history of it and why. I'm not really concerned so much about that. I'm more concerned about responding to all the public testimony and making sure that all of us as commissioners we have all of our questions answered, all the thoughts out there, so that we can make a sound decision on that letter, because the letter does refer to some of the more heated discussions we're going to have potentially on the website information regarding COVID-19. So I want to make sure that we get through that before we go on to the letter. So there's a motion on the floor to
excuse me, Madam Chair. Just to kind of clarify, I wanted to pull up the procedures ordinance 900 and just highlight that the presiding officer shall determine the order of the agenda at the meeting. Any item may be taken out of order upon consensus of the board. I don't believe it requires a formal action if there's consensus to move that item later into the agenda. And I'm looking at Christian to see if he concurs or.
No, that is right. The board can take formal action if they'd like, or they can just by consensus agree to move it to a different spot on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Do I have consensus to move it down past other business? Commissioners?
Chair, I don't have a problem with moving it.
And
Okay.
Chair, I'd be happy to take it right now.
Okay, so it looks like we probably need to vote.
Sorry to mess that up, Chair.
So again, there was a motion on the floor. There still is a motion on the floor to move it. And I don't know, Christian, would it be technically, we would move the whole section of old business down? So it wouldn't be I7?
No, I think what historically has been done is you would simply move item H1, and if a majority of the board would like to see that moved into other business, it could become item I7.
Okay, so I'll clarify my motion. I move that we move the current old business item H1 and put it under other business as item I7. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Excuse me, Chair, just point of clarification. My understanding is we don't need to vote on this, that the consensus alone, or because there was a motion on the floor, do we have to vote on it?
I believe that's correct, but I consider consensus all three of us, so I just want to make sure.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
I thought the same thing, and I was like,
I'm
what are
sorry.
you talking about? Like 3 years ago, Christian
I'm
has
sorry.
taught me.
Okay. All righty. So aye.
Okay, all opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Let the record show Commissioner Berschauer and Commissioner Sterrett voting in the aye and Commissioner Kula voting in the negative. Okay, so that brings us to, let's see, I, other business. I1 is consideration of approval in the matter of an order vacating a portion of the public road at the request of Larry McWilliams and Robert Burnett without a public hearing, Public Works docket RV-2-2021. And we've had some time to review the agenda packet materials regarding this particular issue. Is there further discussion or comment on this particular issue? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve I1?
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Item I2, consideration of approval of intergovernmental agreement IGA number 14843 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Youth Authority for the expunction of juvenile records in the total amount of $24,011.30, retroactive to January 2nd, 2022 through January 1st of 2024. And Christian, I'm not sure if you had any time to follow up on our discussion on Tuesday, but it's my general understanding that the expunction laws changed for juveniles last year in the legislative session. And so this is an adaptation of that. It allows us to be able to handle those records in the manner that we are now supposed to handle them in.
Yeah, that's right. And Ken and I have had a brief discussion, and Ken may have some additional details from Director Beach, but I want to clarify the amount actually in the agenda is not accurate. It's not 24,000. It's actually 54. So just a point of clarification there. And then Ken, I don't know if you wanted to share more of what you had discussed with Jessica briefly.
Right, and if there's further questions about this agenda item, I can also ask Jessica Beach to join if needed. But the conversations that I have with Jessica is just to clarify, there's a new requirement historically for expungement. It was done per request, and here the new law, it's an automatic, it's a requirement that the juvenile department has to go through an expungement for qualifying instances. And with this new requirement came funding for this new requirement. And that's what this agreement does, is anytime the juvenile department processes an expungement, they submit for reimbursement from OIA up to that dollar amount. So it's a funded mandate, to simply put it.
How ironic. Okay, so I will go ahead and move approval of item I2 if there's no further discussion, with the correction on the amount to be $54,011.30. Correct? Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Okay, item I3, consideration of adding additional COVID-19 data including prevention and early treatment resources to the Yamhill County Health website. And this was placed on the agenda by Commissioner Sterrett. So Commissioner Sterrett, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Chair.
Ken, sorry.
I'm sorry, before we get into this discussion, I may have missed something, but did we skip over item I1?
No, the McWilliams and Burnett,
Right.
we voted to.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We didn't have any discussion.
Was there discussion? Should we go back?
I didn't hear any discussion, but I do know that Commissioner Sterrett was the one who moved approval.
My apologies, I missed that. I must, yeah, sorry.
Okay. So Commissioner Sterrett, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this has been certainly a discussion that has been ongoing, and I want to give a little background. I've had some discussions with our Health and Human Services Director, Dr. Manfred, and for the last, I'm going to say this has been ongoing for a number of months, where I've expressed some concern about what I call the lack of balance on the public health website. And that is because I think there's a real disconnect and a real lack of confidence in public health anymore, especially during this COVID situation. So what I was asking for is that we could have more information on the website for people who look to us for information. What we see now is pretty much just it's as if OHA, we're looking at OHA's website, and I think we can do better. And hearing from people in the community who are asking for more information about natural immunity, asking for more information about what constitutes vaccinated, unvaccinated, what about prevention, what about early treatment? These are all things that I think as a public health department, we can be proactive about and not simply rubber stamp the Fauci OHA prevailing COVID narrative. So this is not to disparage the work that our Health and Human Services Director has done or the Health and Human Services staff. They have worked really hard over the last 18 months, and it's been very difficult for them. So all I'm saying is I think we can do better, and I think we can include more information that does lead to better outcomes for people who either get COVID or are concerned about how they can prevent COVID. I don't think we're adequately messaging that. And I wanted to add more information about the, sort of to give an informed consent, some stability to that. Because right now, I don't know that we're giving enough information to people to make a clear decision. For instance, we're not telling pregnant women that the safety studies aren't going to be over until 2025. I think if you're a pregnant woman, you want to know that. I think we're not giving enough information on the adverse events that we're seeing, which according to one pediatrician I spoke with is unprecedented in terms of myocarditis. So whether you're a parent trying to make a decision about whether to vaccinate a child, this is not anti-vax. I speak with people on a regular basis whose advice I really respect. And they said, you know what, this might not be a bad option for people. So it's not anti-vax, it's pro-information. And I think that we can do better. And so I'm asking that we include some information on the website that includes the importance of natural immunity, prevention, early treatment, and also some caveats about some of the risks and the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sterrett. So there were a couple of proposals, I guess you could call them, submitted for this particular discussion item. And they both should be in the packet. Commissioner Sterrett submitted one. I also submitted one last night. They seem to be along the same lines. However, in terms of, I looked at it as kind of a three-part issue. The first would be the way that we put forth information about the COVID-19 vaccine and providing much more robust information and data about VAERS specifically, about risks, and about I'd have to go look at my list, but basically a more balanced approach. You know, people, and if you read the public testimony, people are having a problem with this very prominent first header line statement that we have that say vaccines are safe and effective. Whether you agree or not with being safe, a lot of people are questioning the effectiveness right now, especially Multnomah County just this morning came out and said that they have 2/3 of their fully vaccinated population is having breakthrough positive cases and they're symptomatic. So some of this information needs to be a bit more balanced in terms of how we're portraying these options around COVID to our public. The second part really is about prevention and healthy bodies and how to boost your immune levels. So whether you're vaccinated or not, it doesn't matter anymore. It's how do you prevent yourself from getting severe case of COVID? How do you boost your immune system and how to be prepared? The last issue is really about that at-home care. And I've been researching other county public health websites for several weeks now since we started this discussion. I am shocked to see some of the language on there about at-home care. It literally says, isolate yourself into your room, don't go near anybody, don't touch anything, and if you get really sick, call the doctor. I mean, that's just absolutely preposterous. If you've had COVID, my whole family had COVID, there are some very, very specific things that your doctor will tell you to do, and they are not things that are unsafe for most people, right? This is advice that is going out across the board to every symptomatic COVID patient. I have found counties that have posted on their website through their public health department, very specific, at-home care. This is what you do. Here's a long list of what you do. And so I think that part too needs to be more robust. I think it would be very helpful because, most people that have gotten COVID, especially recently, if they were vaccinated, they're not particularly prepared because they were told that they wouldn't get it. And so when you get sick and you're scrambling, it's really hard to find this information, ironically. So that is what I would like to see. This is what I've done for my parents. My parents are high risk, right? I put together COVID kits for them because I care. I want them to be as prepared as possible. This is how we should be treating the public that lives in Yamhill County, with the most information they can possibly have to protect themselves. So that's really, I see a lot of similarities between our two proposals. I don't know how we want to sort of dissect it, if we want to go section by section, but I would like to also get Commissioner Kula's thoughts in this discussion.
All right, thank you, Chair. I was at risk of interrupting you. I was going to put my digital hand up to make sure I got third in line. Well, thank you. I want to start by referring back to our conversation that we just had during the work session with John Morgan. And I recall that he noted that there are things that commissioners do at different elevations, and there's things that staff do. And he said, I thought this was really interesting, it was helpful to me. Don't be working at the 5,000 foot level. And I remind myself of that all the time when I'm working with public works. I'm like, this is their job. If I can help them be eyes and ears and help people with tricky situations, that's great, but really that's their work. I'm there to provide an ear, and if they ask me for guidance, then that's fine. But don't worry yourself about 5,000 foot level, because that's why we have staff. We hire them, we trust our county administrator to work with them and have the best available information at their hands, make sure that they're trained well for their work and that the skills they bring into the process, they're hired for those skills and experiences. So I see this actually as more of a 500 foot level conversation than even a 5,000 foot. Just to lay that out there. The second thing I want to note is that I believe that it was 3 weeks ago that Commissioner Starrett brought to us the proposal to hear from a panel of what she was titling experts who hadn't been heard by traditional the medical practice or the traditional or the orthodoxy maybe. And I apologize for putting words in your mouth. I'm just trying to have a nice neutral comment, Commissioner. Someday I'll get over the fact you're not chair. But my recommendation at the time, and by agreement of the board, those folks went to our advisory board, who advises both the Board of Commissioners and the Health and Human Services and Public Health. And wonderfully, Commissioner Sterrett went with this group and proposed, and there was a discussion at the Board of Health. My expectation was that if the Board of Health felt that there was something missing, that they would have presented that information to HHS and that changes would have happened based upon that conversation. Since I don't understand that there were the changes that you have requested, I would ask you to go back to the Board of Health with this recommendation. But the third thing along this lines in this discussion is that I would like to hear either from Director Manfred or from Ken, sorry to put you on the spot, Ken, about what our website says right now, because a lot of the information that I hear requested is available on the website. You have all commissioners looked at the website in great detail, and so have I, and I see this information. Some of the testimony we received from the public included things like saying that the vaccine is biological warfare against all the people of America. And I want to set that comment aside and like dig into some of the other comments. They were about, is the one of the vaccines approved or authorized? And while I think that the language is important, I also see a lot of that information on the website. So if I'm missing it, then let's look at it and say, oh, like there it is. But I really truly feel that this is a 500-foot level discussion, and we should be working at the 35,000-foot level discussion. But with that, I would love to hear from Director Manfred or Ken about what is on the website right now. And thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. Just before we get into Ken or Director Manfred, I just want to respond a little bit about your 500-foot level comment. Our responsibility, our job is to set policy. And the policy that we're discussing is that we need more balanced information regarding COVID-19. However that comes out, this just happens to be in the form of a website. It could be a mailer, it could be whatever. But that really is the core of the discussion we're having right now, is the policy of this county is not just going to parrot what OHA is saying when it's really not particularly helpful for most people when they're getting COVID post-vaccination. We are going to adapt, and we are going to be more proactive and more balanced. That is the policy that we're discussing.
And Chair, thank you for that clarification. But I would say that requesting, which Chair Sterrett has, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Sterrett has requested in the past, that is setting policy. And then we heard from Director Manfred that was very important. And then she looked at the website and felt like that they are doing the what you would call the balanced approach. So digging in further to that into very specific words, I don't feel like is the role of the Board of Commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. I would say that if the majority of the Board of Commissioners disagrees with a particular department head or staff on policy issues, the buck stops with us. That's what we were elected to do. And so that's why we're having this conversation. I will also say that the Board of Health, if you were listening in, I'm not sure if you were on that meeting, Commissioner Sterrett and I were on the meeting, but those members of the Board of Health, as well as the panel of doctors, were very clear that they didn't disagree with any of these suggestions. Yes, vitamin supplements are key to supporting the immune system. Yes, proning and a pulse oximeter and a thermometer and all these different things you have to do if you have COVID. Absolutely. We tell our patients that. That's what they said. We tell our patients that. What nobody can answer for me so far is why is it not good enough to place that on a county public health website when the entire point of our job is to keep the county health and to support public health.
And Chair,
So-
I would note that since we are still talking about this, that my request, and I assume that the Board of Health, if they had felt like there was a need for changes, they would have made that recommendation to HHS. And with that, I would love to hear from Director Manfred if we could.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. The Board of Health does serve at our discretion, and they inform us, but ultimately, like I said before, the Board of Commissioners is responsible for setting the policy. If we do not agree or feel that it is fair and balanced, then we have absolutely the opportunity to change that. Ken, is this a good time to go to you or Director Manfred? I don't see her on here, so I'm not sure.
Yes, I'd be happy to. And if Carolina, if you could go ahead and promote Director Manfred, that'd be great. You know, I do want to, you know, if I could start off as, you know, as Lindsay's joining the meeting, because I know this agenda item has generated a lot of media attention and has, with some of the articles and things, have possibly created some anxiety and some stresses within our public health team. And I just wanted to just quickly take this opportunity and just speaking on my own behalf as the administrator, I just want to express my sincere and humble gratitude to our public health team and the work that they've been doing for the last 2 years. And I know the board feels the same way. You've all recognized the excellent work that our public health team has been doing. And it's not without its challenges. And on top of that, I can't say it enough. We have an outstanding public health team, and we have an outstanding leadership team that's helping with public health. And in particular, I do want to call out Director Manfred because she's been amazing to work with. She's an outstanding leader. She's the epitome of professionalism and grace under fire, and especially with how challenging the last 2 years have been navigating this pandemic. I am very fortunate to have a leader like Lindsay, and I do, because I'm not, as the county administrator, I'm not an expert in public health or any type of other medical related things. So I'm putting that disclaimer out. And as I do for other departments, I really rely and trust on Lindsay's expertise and judgment, the same way I rely and trust Mark Lago in Public Works on decisions with the roads and bridges, or the sheriff when it comes to law enforcement matters. You know, I do have some questions, and kind of the timing of the work session this morning. It was interesting because I know where my expertise lies is more specific to process and county operations. And I do recognize that my position, I'm accountable to the Board of Commissioners and implementing policy direction that I'm given. And it's my responsibility to then meet with the departments and make sure we're operating and providing services within those policy guidelines. So, you know, that being said, you know, with a lot of the discussions and with some of the details and looking at some of the information that's being requested that we put up on the website, I do have questions about roles and responsibilities, and, you know, and it'd be helpful for me, and it's not necessarily something that a discussion point for this meeting. It could be for later, but it does seem like some further discussion around process, roles, responsibilities, and how that relates to Ordinance 848, which is the county administrator ordinance. You know, because it's my understanding that the board, may have a policy directive that, you know, as an example, like from the earlier discussion around communications, and it's really my responsibility is to take that overarching goal and come up with the operational means on how we address that and how we come into that. And so this one has, you know, this particular topic has raised a lot of questions for me, specific when we get into doing specific updates or edits to what's provided on the county website. And so that is something that, you know, I'm not really prepared to kind of go into a lot of detail on that, but it does raise questions to me as far as process, expectations of my office, providing some clarity on what we're looking at. So then I can in turn, working with the departments, whatever the issue may be, on how we navigate these waters when, you know, there may be questions or concerns or information that's provided on the website and we're looking to make changes, or what those specific changes are going to look like. The other thing that I just also wanted to quickly note, that I also want to just call attention and make sure that you know, that we also have an opportunity to possibly hear from county counsel's office or some time to review that, depending on the types of changes that are being proposed or the information that's being requested that we put out on the website, doesn't necessarily put us into conflict with ORS 431 or with our standing agreements that we may have with OHA, or you know, so that's going to be another open question that I have. That's a long introductory statement on my part to just, you know, what I was hoping that Director Manfred could do, and something that we had talked about, was to have Director Manfred provide some additional information, possibly share screen, show information on the website, because there were some improvements based on the discussions that were had with the Board of Health, and some of those discussions and recommendation items that did come out of that meeting, I believe, were incorporated into the website, or it might be helpful to actually see where, if there were questions raised that we don't think that information is being presented, we can show, you know, directly, you know, here's where we're displaying that information. So my apologies for, you know, speaking a lot longer than I usually intend to, but again, I just, before I turn it over to Lindsay, I just, you know, again, want to really say thank you to our public health staff and to Director Manfred for all the work that she's been doing. And I'm happy to answer questions, but at this point, if it's okay with the board, we'll just have Lindsay go ahead and present.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, Director Manfred, it would be nice to hear about some of those changes if they were implemented before we kind of launch into the bigger discussion as well. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And yes, I'd be happy to share some of the website content. I think, as Ken suggested, doing some screen sharing would probably be the best way to do that, so that you can actually see what is on the website. And as Ken noted, many of the things that are listed in the request to add to the website are present on our website. And so I think it would be worthwhile to go through some of those, and I can show you where those things are. So if it's okay with the board, I'd like to go ahead and share my screen. I have a lot of tabs open, trying to stay organized here. So I hope that we will be able to find all of those things, trying to do it in a way that makes the most sense for us. Are folks able to see my screen right now? No.
I am not.
Okay. How about now?
Nope.
Okay, well, let's see here.
That might be a Carolina question.
All right.
Oh,
Okay, now do you see the website?
yes.
Okay. Thank you for your patience. So what you're looking at here is our main COVID website. So when someone clicks on COVID-19 from the general public health webpage, this is the main COVID page. And I do want to just note and mention that all of our COVID information, our entire website, is also available in Spanish, and it's in translated page by page. So we don't just use Google Translate, because we know that doesn't always work. So we do have all this content available in Spanish, and we make sure that all of the information is in both English and Spanish available at the same time for community members. So again, this is the main page here. You can see it takes you through some of these things that we have either received the most questions about, or per the request of our board, you all, making sure that they're very clear and apparent of where you can find that information. And then just going down, this is the main page, and I don't want to make anyone dizzy, but I just wanted to get down here where you can see all these various topics related to COVID in general. Again, there's a lot of information. We've done our best to keep the website as organized as possible so that people are able to find what they're looking for as quickly and easily as possible. So there were 2 pages that largely had changes that came from the Board of Health after our discussion. And so I will go through those perhaps first, and then we can look at maybe a couple of the other ones. One of the pages we updated around the if I'm sick, what should I do? Again, we really did focus on, the isolation and quarantine, which is one of the huge responsibilities that public health has, wanting to make sure people know how to seek healthcare. And I'll take you to the page that this has more information on in just a moment. And then as public health has shifted from doing active case investigation and contact tracing, we wanted to make sure that people had information on where they can fill out their information should they choose to do that. We do encourage people to do that because it helps us with data collection, but it's certainly not any sort of requirement. And then just general information about this. This is new. It wasn't actually a recommendation from the Board of Health. It's just that this hotline just went live not too long ago. And so that is new information. And then of course, more details around isolation and quarantine. We get a lot of questions around this. And so we're trying to make it as clear as possible. And then Oregon did change the definition for vaccination status as it stands for isolation and quarantine purposes only. And so we provided that information. So that's the general, if I'm sick, what should I do? I'm going to go toggle back to the main page here. We've got a page on at-home care. You can link to the at-home care page on the I am sick, what should I do page, but you can also get to it from this main screen here. This page did include some updates from our Board of Health, and we thank them for that. They are a great group of community members, and I'm really grateful to have them providing some guidance and direction and their ideas around this. We changed some of the language around utilization of a pulse oximeter advice information around that. We did still want to make sure that we kept the emergency signs up front and really apparent, because we think that that's critical. We did add information related to someone that might need help finding a doctor or getting health insurance and where people can go. So if someone doesn't have a healthcare provider, that they have a resource to be able to get connected. Luckily, the vast majority of individuals in Yamhill County do have health insurance and do have a primary care provider assigned to them, but we do know that there are additional people who don't. And so with this is not on our website, but I also just want to note that we work closely with different partner organizations, particularly organizations that work with populations that are less likely to be covered by insurance or have access to healthcare, to make sure that they get information that they can distribute through other mechanisms, whether that's flyers or conversations or things like that, to make sure that information is getting disseminated as broadly as we possibly can. We've got information, this is unchanged, although we did, based on feedback from our Board of Health, we updated the section around preventing dehydration, gave a little bit more information about this in general. We actually used some of the content of the King County Public Health Department in Washington. Commissioner Berschauer, I believe you shared that one with us, and I thought that the way it was laid out was really, really nice. And so I think we used some of that as a nice template. And then we added the signs and symptoms of dehydration, which the board felt was very appropriate. They did note that they didn't want to give specific, quantities of liquid, so to speak, but really focused on the general prevention of dehydration and watching for signs and symptoms of dehydration. So that part, this section is the prevent dehydration has been revamped, and the watch for signs of dehydration is new content that we added since last Thursday when the board met. This information has not changed really content-wise, but I will say, as we are always going through our web pages, anytime we think that we can make something more clear, we do that. And we did make some updates here just in hopes of trying to make it more clear and easier to read for people if they're looking at our website for guidance around preventing the spread in their home. And then one of the things that came up at the Board of Health is just the amount of stress that everyone is under right now, but also that is added, right? There's added stress if someone you love or someone in your household gets sick with COVID. And so we did add this section really related to mental health supports that includes resources and information and phone numbers and hotlines. There's a couple of links to some other information related to at-home care tips through the Mayo Clinic. And we linked to the CDC's page around what to do if you're sick as well. Going to toggle back again to the COVID main page. And I'm going to go to the boosting your immune system. This is a page that I do want to note that we've had on our website for a very long time. Folks that work with me and have worked with me for a long time know that I'm a huge supporter of all things prevention and having healthy bodies and keeping your immune system strong. And I think we know that all of those things impact someone's ability to fight off infection, as well as their ability to maintain a healthy body from things like chronic diseases and things like that. So this is certainly something that we've tried to communicate to people pre-COVID and post-COVID as well. But this page is really dedicated to boosting your immune system. Couple of things that we modified based on, again, our Board of Health's feedback is we have some links here. So some of the feedback was getting more information for people about regular exercise. What does that look like? What's appropriate to keep your immune system healthy? How much exercise is needed? Some more information related to that. We did find a link here that has more details around that someone could click on to get more information about healthy regular exercise. I will say this section, we are lucky we have one of our Board of Health members is a physical therapist, and so there might be some continued revisions into different ways that we link to more specific information to folks. We also revamped some of the information related to vitamin supplementation. So one of the things that came up was wanting to highlight zinc also as a supporter of the immune system. And so we just reworded some of this section here around consider vitamin supplementation. One thing that came up at the board was, do we recommend specific doses for individuals related to this? And what the group stated that they thought was appropriate was to link to the recommended daily allowances related to vitamins and minerals, essentially. So that is what we have here. You can see there's a link here that will take you to that. The other thing that people felt, and this came from many members of the Board of Health, was that we really should be asking people to talk to their healthcare provider about this as well. There are nuances, there's things to consider, and you know, it's especially if you're talking about anything beyond sort of the stereotypical vitamin supplementation. You know, there are things that people might want to be thoughtful about and connect with their healthcare provider about. The information on vitamin D has been on the website for, again, a very long time. Just a specific call out to vitamin D, sources, places you can get it, and then again, talking to your healthcare provider about supplementation. The information around daily routine is somewhat strategic in that most of the studies that I have read have really indicated that daily dosing is superior to things like monthly or even weekly mega dosing. I will say the specific information around vitamin D was at the request of our county commissioners. So back to the main page here. I'm going to go to the vaccine information page because there was a number of things that came up in statements, both in writing that are in the board packet, as well as sort of how you framed the conversation, Commissioner Bershauer. So this is our main vaccine webpage, right? This probably goes without saying, please check our website. Things change when the weather gets bad. You know, we have here just eligibility, and that is largely what this page contains is logistical information for individuals who are looking to get their vaccine. Some more information about eligibility, excuse me, and then information about where to go. These are just some general things. Please bring your ID if you've got it to the vaccine. There's consent forms. And then immediately down here, you see all the emergency use authorization forms. We are required by law, and we absolutely do every single time make sure that people are given a copy of this document, depending on, again, which vaccine they use. I do want to, I'll just pull up one just for the sake of going through here. If you have not seen these before, this really does have a lot of information in it. It has information about the fact that the, you know, depending on which vaccine we're talking about, that it is, you know, has not gone through the full FDA process, that they're under emergency use authorization. It's got information about obviously just what the vaccine is. It's got information about, you know, things that you need to make sure that you tell your healthcare provider about, including if you're pregnant or becoming pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, if you have allergies, if you've had, you know, all sorts of things here. A little bit of more information about the vaccine. Here, it's got all of the ingredients of the vaccine. It's got information about where things are at in clinical trials related to the vaccine. Again, this looks a little different depending on which vaccine we're talking about, because they're at different stages here. And then it's got risks of the vaccine that go into those things that we monitor for in our clinic. It also has sections on myocarditis, including what you would watch for signs and symptoms. And then it's got this long list of side effects that have been reported related to the vaccine. It's also got information about reporting to VAERS. And then this is a bunch of FAQs around, you know, certain scenarios that I won't necessarily go through here, but just wanted to share that with you all. This is a section that talks about consent, when consent's required, when it's not, what would need to happen. And then the remaining pages are just places people can go to get a vaccine. As well as if, you know, clearly this is the same everywhere, but has the same information. Let's see, those are just forms there. We've also got information around VAERS. I want to find the right page here. VAERS information, what it is. We have information that the healthcare providers are required to report serious adverse events to the system, even when they think that the vaccine was not the cause. So I think this is something to highlight, and it's an important thing to note. Historically, reporting into the VAERS system by healthcare providers has only been required when they suspect that the adverse event the patient has experienced is related to the vaccine. Now, as it relates to the COVID vaccine specifically, even if they don't believe there is any correlation between the vaccine and the adverse health event, they are required to report into that system. Then there's more information about VAERS that you can link to get more details. Reports into the VAERS, you can link here and it goes there. And then we've also uploaded instructions for people should they want to download this. This was a result of the conversation we had this summer, where we landed was that making sure that people understood what VAERS had access to the system and instructions on how to gather data. So that's where that came from. And just a couple of other things that were on the list of things of wanting to include. We do have information on breakthrough cases in our, want to find the right page. Information on breakthrough cases on our webpage here. If you go to COVID data and case counts, right, we've got a lot of information. We've got information about breakthrough. I will say, you know, perhaps there is some confusion around this section. We've really, because we started reporting breakthrough cases before Oregon Health Authority was reporting breakthrough cases, we were using what Oregon Health and Science University used in terms of how they framed this. So, for example, this latest update, looking at data from the 10th to the 16th, right, shows that just under 69% of individuals who tested positive for COVID, where we have lab reports, were in people who were not fully vaccinated, meaning 31% would be breakthrough cases. So it's just sort of flipping that around. Certainly, if that is too confusing for folks, we could consider making changes or updates to that. We also have a link to PCR cycle thresholds. I will say this link is just a document that goes to an FAQ provided by Oregon Health Authority. I am not a lab technician or expert, and so rely on what we have here. But I will note that the information related to PCR thresholds, there's no one standard, and local public health nor does state public health regulate labs in that way to require certain things. Let's see, I think those are likely the big things that I wanted to highlight in terms of both what had been requested of us, that is content on the website, as well as the information that was updated from our Board of Health. And also just want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to our public health staff who had to very quickly become communication experts in terms of trying to get this information out, trying to maintain it as up to date as absolutely possible. And they do a wonderful job in managing this, and I'm very grateful to them. So I'm going to stop screen sharing, but I will say if anyone has any questions or wants me to go back to a page, I'm certainly happy to do so.
Thank you, Director Manfred. So I'm going to start with a couple things because there's a lot of information, but I am very, very happy to see those additions. It sounds like a lot of the discussion that was that occurred in the Board of Health meeting did make it actually onto the page in the past week or so. So that's wonderful to see. I love the stuff on dehydration and why it's important. And then certainly, you know, the boosted information about prevention. I'm wondering, I made a couple notes, and feel free to correct me if I missed it on the website because I was kind of going through with you. But in terms of vitamin specific, so there's a link to a vitamin, I think it's from the FDA, but it's basically a list of all vitamins and why, you know, what they do. I think that's very different from a list of vitamins that are specific to COVID and COVID symptoms and what COVID does in your body. So for me, you know, I mean, a list of all the vitamins is fine, but I wouldn't know what I'm supposed to take. And so I think the part I'm getting stuck on is, you know, why, if we're going to list that these vitamins are, you know, over the counter, they're safe, and, you know, there's been no reports of vitamin toxicity. Why wouldn't we elevate some of them and say why? You know, vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium, probiotics, melatonin. Why would we not be able to say that these particular ones are key in preventing or in the at-home care of symptomatic COVID? Is there something that's preventing us from doing that? Because I've seen other counties do it.
I'd be interested in seeing the other counties' information because, to be honest, I've received a lot of feedback from other communities who have said that we have a far more robust information on this, and that people who are champions of things like supplements have been happy with our website. So certainly it's helpful to have examples because then it allows me to get more concrete on what you're thinking or hoping to see. So if you have any of those examples, please do share. I'm not saying like pull them up right now, but it would be helpful to see those at some point. I would say the risk in doing so is that page is dedicated to increasing your immune system, boosting your immune system. We know that boosting your immune system is a critical role in fighting any infection, right? Just like, I don't hear this enough, but I'm a true champion for getting enough sleep. We know that is critical to having a healthy body. And we have information on our website of being, you know, well rested, making sure you're getting enough sleep, increases your immune system, which is helpful in all sorts of things, including fighting off infections or preventing infections. There is not evidence, and I know that not everyone on this call agrees with me, but there is not evidence that directly links vitamin supplementation to COVID prevention or to COVID treatment. So I think the prevention and the treatment, I mean, it's hard, it can be hard, but I think we need to separate those conversations. You know, as we were looking at what we put on our website in terms of linking to you know, vitamin and supplementation recommendations. We were going through many different pages, and there was this beautiful information done by the National Institute of Health. They have a lot of great information about vitamins, supplements, and the reason for those things. And it speaks very clearly that these are not proven to treat COVID. And I think the risk of putting that out there is twofold. One, there's some liability if we're telling people that these things that sources like the National Institute of Health are saying have not been proven to treat. There's a risk and a liability there for us. And I think the other piece is, where do we stop? Who decides what unauthorized or unapproved treatments go on our webpage? Who makes those decisions, and when do we stop them? You know, there is so much information out there, and I want to recognize that neither of you put these examples as things you'd like to see, but examples that I'm seeing about drinking your own urine, ordering special dirt from Canada, you know, to eat or to rub on your skin to treat COVID. Like, these are things that are out there that many people are buying into. And so I think the risk of taking information that has not been proven and putting it on our website is, where do we stop and who's making those decisions? And I think that's a huge question. And I think that what comes into play here too is the role of public health versus the role of individual healthcare. We are public health, and we are not individual healthcare providers. And people, they don't come to us when they're sick. That's not the kind of treatment that we give. And I'm all for whatever it is that an individual and their healthcare provider decide is the best course of treatment for them. But when things are used off-label, whether we're talking about, one example I think was on the list of Pepcid or whatever else it might be, using things off-label, really that should only be done at the discretion of a healthcare provider, a licensed healthcare provider, a physician, a nurse practitioner. But that is not for me to decide. And I would say that it's not the governing body to decide what off-label medications should be recommended or not. Thank you.
Director Manfred, I have not heard a single commissioner refer to drinking urine as a proposed something to put on the website. That sounds really kind of out there, and I have not heard that. What we are talking about are vitamins and supplements that have been around for eons, as well as over-the-counter medications. And I did post the Macon County Public Health preventative and at-home care management sheet during the Board of Health meeting. I did so right after I posted King County Health's language on dehydration, and I'm thankful to see that you have posted that on the website. This is the at-home care sheet, and it does list all of those vitamins. It does list Pepcid. It also lists why proning is important, and deep breathing and walking, and potentially a baby aspirin every day. And I called this doctor because I was actually pretty surprised to see that they had this prominently placed on their county public health website. And I said, how did you do this? Why did you do this? And how is it on there? And she said, well, my partner in my hospital serves on the Board of Health for our county. And all of the doctors in our hospital agree that this is good preventative care. In fact, when anyone comes in with COVID, we give them this sheet and send them home with this. Now, obviously, if you have particular pre-existing conditions that may not allow you to take aspirin, baby aspirin, then that's certainly a factor. But these are basic preventative care treatments that are over the counter, that people take every day. They're not specific to COVID-19 virus. They are specific to the symptoms that COVID produces in your body, and they have been proven to help with that. And so I guess my question is, I go back to, if it's good enough for all of our doctors, and I'll tell you, this is the sheet that my doctor gave me when I had COVID. There's 2 pages of it, of vitamins, supplements, and at-home care treatments. So if it's good enough for people who are symptomatic with COVID, how is it irresponsible that we would put basic information out? And in the information I submitted to the agenda packet, there's some very clear disclaimers on there that says, hey, if you have other conditions, pre-existing conditions, reach out to your doctor. This is a benign recommended dose. Contact your doctor, seek advice that way. So I don't see how, as you said, and as you described, fringe sort of recommendations. This is not fringe. This is what doctors are giving symptomatic COVID patients. And I find the information very helpful, especially when people become sick and then they're stuck at home. And it's very difficult to access a doctor when you're stuck at home and you can't leave and you're very sick. Commissioner Kula has his hand up several times. So Commissioner Kula, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Chair. I think that I am hearing that we are not the healthcare provider to any one individual. We're public health. We are public health, being Director Manfred leads an agency. This is what you said was, if it's okay for prevention, it must be okay for cure. And what I hear Director Manfred saying is, we have it on a prevention page because it's good for overall wellness. Putting something onto a treatment page that's not authorized, that doesn't have rigorous studies behind it, is irresponsible, frankly, and brings us into the picture of liability, because again, we're not the ones who are, we're not the doctor. And so while I appreciate your own research, again, this is, you're talking to a doctor We're not the doctor.
Commissioner Kula, this is from the Macon County Public Health website. This is their own public health department, and they felt it was important to post this information for all to see so that everyone was as prepared as possible to deal with symptomatic COVID. There's no mention of drinking urine or ordering special dirt from other countries. This is pretty basic stuff. But I am happy to see, I'm trying to find my notes, I am happy to see the language on dehydration. I would like more specifics on the vitamins, just because I think that when people go to a public health website because they're sick, they are looking for specific things. What should I do? How should I work through this this illness? And there's a lot of fear there. And so I would prefer to make that much more clear and much more prevalent that, you know, if you are sick, here are the recommended list of vitamins and why, because they do affect certain symptoms of COVID in a positive way. On the pulse oximeter, I noticed the language about the pulse ox, but unless I missed it, I didn't really see why. I didn't know what a pulse oximeter was, frankly, before I had COVID. It's just not a thing that's been in my past. So I think that unless I missed it, I would recommend that we have a little bit more specific language as to why someone would buy that, why it's important, especially for COVID. And I did see the link to how to use it and what it means. It wasn't very clear, or at least it didn't stand out that, you know, if your readings are below 92, you really should contact your doctor. So having that more clear language, and that's been the problem, I think, from the beginning of these discussions. It's how we portray this information matters. So if we bury it or we make it so obsolete that nobody really catches why it's important, then it's not effective. So unless I missed it, that would be my recommendation on the pulse ox, is just saying, you know, why people use that. Even a thermometer, we discovered we didn't have a thermometer that was working. So obviously checking your temperatures and maintaining a log of fevers and that kind of thing is important during COVID. And I had a couple comments on the vax part, but I want to get to Commissioner Sterrett so she can weigh in with some of her reaction as well.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Dr. Manfred. A couple of things I wanted to point out. And just to reiterate what Ken said earlier, one of the things I've always appreciated is that we've had these discussions. Director Manfred and I have had these discussions for a very long time. We've managed to disagree. I believe we've always been civil. I believe there's always been the point where we came to an impasse, which is why I suggested we come to the full board. Because the one thing that I want to always be able to walk away saying is that if I knew something, I said something, and I wanted to share that information with people. A couple of things that are concerning to me, and while I do appreciate the changes, I would point out that on the NIH website, there are very specific vitamins called out, like echinacea and quercetin, and they are on NIH website. So there are specifics, and melatonin, specifics to COVID prevention. A couple of things. I wanted to ask if there was a consideration to incorporating any of the panelists' information onto changes on the website. I know we had medical doctor, Dr. Charles Pennick, who's been treating COVID patients for a while. We've had a couple of naturopaths chime in. We've gotten some information on our public comment from an Oregon doctor who's got some concerns. We have a local naturopath who submitted some information, which is in the packet. And so what I'm wondering is if we took into consideration medical professionals who are actually treating COVID and their recommendations, the panelists.
I think I can't speak for the Board of Health. So, you know, where they landed in terms of their recommendations was after listening to all the people who gave public comment, including the physicians. I do recall one conversation being from Board of Health members is even the people who have presented information today have shared drastically different dosages right, of vitamin supplementation. So where do we go with that? It seems that that is not definitive, because even the speakers didn't have an agreement on what dosage should be recommended. Some of the things didn't feel relevant to these types of at-home treatments, right? They were IV vitamin C and things of that nature that really, I think it's pretty far-fetched to think that someone would have access to IV vitamin C and IV equipment. So I think a lot of them didn't necessarily feel applicable, or that there felt like there was not consensus even among those individuals, that even further propelled this. We probably shouldn't be making dosage recommendations, and instead let's let them have conversation with their own healthcare providers to determine what is the best course for them. And in many cases, that might be supplementation. It may not. Those are, again, conversations that I think people should be having with their healthcare providers. And if someone does not have a healthcare provider, finding access either through our website, or this has largely been related to monoclonal antibodies, have put my phone number and my email out there, and all of our staff know that if someone is trying to access monoclonal antibodies or other things because they don't have a healthcare provider, that I can help be a conduit to the best of my ability. Again, monoclonal antibodies are in short supply, and right now the people that are getting those are the highest risk of the highest risk. So that is no way am I saying that I can guarantee I can access that for someone. I'm just saying that we have done everything that we possibly can to make sure that anyone who doesn't have access to a healthcare provider, that we can connect them. And again, I would not start giving them advice myself. What I would do is I would work with a network of providers and say, hey, this is the situation. Are you able to work with me and help get this person what they need? Which is not that's not exclusive to COVID. That is a role that public health plays in many ways.
Thank you. A couple of things I just wanted to bring up regarding PCR. We've asked OHA for some information on cycle thresholds, which we know have been an issue in the past, because raising and lowering cycle thresholds can really make a difference. And we also know that, a positive test can pretty much, it can show positive for 12 weeks after initial infection. So we're seeing perhaps positive cases that are not necessarily active infections, and viral replication is not continuing to go on. So I'm a little concerned about that. I'm a little concerned about the liability question. When we're concerned about liability for vitamin dosages, but we're not concerned about liability when we say that the vaccine reduces the spread of the virus in our community, I don't know that we can say that anymore. And I'm a little bit concerned about our liability when we say getting vaccinated prevents severe illness, hospitalization, and death. So that might be a question for Christian, in that we're making a statement which we know is not true. The other thing, and I'll make a note about this, is the mentioning Comirnaty, and that are we giving that out? Are you administering that vaccine? Because it's my understanding is it's not available while the other vaccines are under EUA. So to say that that is an option, I think might be misleading.
I know some of those questions were for Christian, but sorry, excuse me.
Oh, I think that was a combination of Christian and Director Manfred. So Christian, why don't you kind of tackle the first part?
And basically, I'll reiterate what Ken mentioned before, and then I'll let Lindsay expand on it if she wants to. But we, as the local public health authority, we are required to follow the state law, and in terms of liability for administering or providing the vaccines, there is some protection and immunity under federal law, as long as we are following the guidelines and the practices and administering the vaccines and providing information and doing all of that in accordance with the instructions that we've been given. So I think we're doing as much as we can to limit our risk, as long as we're following those guidelines. And there is an obligation under the statute that we follow the law, and there is potential liability and the possibility that OHA could enforce against the county if we're not following OHA guidelines, laws, rules, and regulations as they've been provided to the local public health authorities. So I don't know if that helps answer your question or not. I think there is potential liability, in a lot of different situations for a lot of different reasons. But as long as we are following the guidance that we've been given and working in conjunction with and in accordance with our partners at the state and federal level, then we've done what we can to limit our liability.
So we're passing the buck, basically saying OHA says it's okay. So when we say getting vaccinated prevents severe illness, hospitalization, and death, and we can call it safe and effective on our website, we're basically saying that because they say it.
We're following the guidance that we've been given by the health professionals at the state and federal level. That's right.
Okay. All right. So that whole liability piece is, I think, in question, in that we can be concerned about liability of telling people to take vitamins, but we're not concerned about the liability when we say getting vaccinated prevents severe illness, when we're seeing these.
Well, I think, as has been said, we're concerned about liability at every level, and Director Manfred has talked about this. That's why the recommendations are what they are. They're not specific healthcare information targeted at a specific individual for their specific needs. That's something that they should be working with their healthcare providers on. We're trying to provide generally recognized and publicly available information at that higher level.
Okay. The other question was about Comirnaty, and there was the mention in there that this was a vaccine that was available and could potentially be administered. And my understanding is that's not available in the United States. It is not being utilized at this point. I think that might be some misleading information.
Yeah, my understanding is that they are the same. One may be called Comirnaty, but the Pfizer vaccines that are going out, my understanding is that they are the same. But if Director Manfred or others have different information, certainly I think that would be good to hear. But my understanding is that there is no material difference other than what it is that they're labeled.
The Department of Defense has ruled that they are distinctly different, and that's been a court ruling regarding military vaccination, so that but Comirnaty cannot be administered right now while the other vaccines are under emergency use authorization. So I think that we really bring our credibility into question when we tell people that they might be getting something that they cannot be getting at this point in this country. These are important points for us to acknowledge.
Commissioner Sterrett, I want to hear from Director Manfred, because you asked her a question, but you're speaking in kind of as though you're answering it now. I apologize for interrupting you. I just want to hear from Director Manfred about that question.
Yeah, we'll hear from her. I need to finish my sentence. Thank you very much, Commissioner. So basically, the information that is on there would need to be clarified for us to make it clear to people that that is not a vaccine that they would be receiving. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
As I said, my understanding is that there is no material difference. I'm happy to take a look at the materials that you mentioned. I haven't seen those. I don't know the context in which that decision was made, and what impact that decision might have on the greater guidance from the CDC or from OHA on that particular vaccine. So I'm happy to take a look at that information if you'd like to send it to me.
Okay, and if Dr. Manfred can address whether or not we're actually administering that when we are putting that on our website. I just would want to clarify to people that they're not getting that, and your thoughts.
Yeah. So I think a couple of thoughts. One is the emergency use authorization form, so the document that's given to anyone when they're getting the vaccine. If you look at the one that is for the vaccines under the Pfizer umbrella, and this is again linked on the main vaccine page from our website, it has the information and it's labeled both from the brand name, as you mentioned, Comirnaty, as well as says, and the Pfizer BioNTech COVID vaccine. Now, the reason it can be on the same document is because within that vial of whether you're talking about the name brand or not, it is the exact same content. Everything is the same. The ingredients are the same. It's a labeling component. And that's what happens when something goes through the FDA process, right? The Pfizer vaccine, Pfizer is the large company. And so they called it the Pfizer COVID vaccine. And then once it goes through that final approval process of the FDA, then they get to come up with their fancy name, and that's what you're seeing there. And so the answer is, do we have anything labeled with the brand name in our fridges and freezers? No, we don't. The content is the same in both of those vials, and the document that we provide people is made both for the brand name and the other one, so they are getting information about that. And again, those are the requirements. A couple of the other questions that you asked earlier, just related to content on the website, again, as it relates to COVID treatments. Again, I am not making any statement specifically about the content or the treatments that you all have recommended putting on the website. What I'm saying is, I think that what needs to be established is who makes those decisions. Is it that we want our governing body to be making decisions about what we put on our treatment page versus healthcare providers? And I think that that's why I'm concerned, because at what point do we say this one is gross, or I don't like this one, or this one's not okay, but this one is, when all of those things are at this point not proven to treat COVID, right? Like, we have to have a line somewhere, and it seems like proven versus unproven is a clear way to have that line, and then other information can be provided by, again, people's healthcare providers. You also asked a question around statements related to COVID vaccine and its effectiveness. Yes, I think as we're all learning through the Omicron variant, we're seeing the vaccine be less effective, and that there's a number of reasons why when it comes to spread. Although I want to note that we have hovered pretty consistently between the 70-30% split, meaning 70% of people vaccinated, 30% unvaccinated. Excuse me, reverse that. 30% breakthrough cases, 70% vaccinated folks. So if 30% has been our breakthrough case, we're not seeing a big shift in that. I understand what's happening in other places, and I anticipate that happening here too. But the data also still continues to clearly show that hospitalizations and deaths are drastically reduced by individuals being vaccinated. And that plays out at national levels, international levels, state levels, and even our local data. When we look at vaccination rates, upwards of 16 times more likely to be hospitalized in those people who are unvaccinated versus vaccinated. So I think that there is a lot of evidence to continue to support the vaccines in that mechanism.
Thank you. I want to just go back to a couple of things, and thank you for that. One of the on our website, we talk about the risks, and the risks list side effects reported, and the side effects reported are things like sore arms, swelling, pretty minor side effects. And then later on, with a mention of VAERS, it says that this VAERS is basically for trained experts. So that, in other words, looking at the data from VAERS is something that only a trained expert, really should be parsing, when really some of the side effects and the red flags we're seeing, anyone can look at those and look at the fact that they are more significant than a sore arm. So I think we're downplaying the importance of looking at that information, and that would be more information I would like to see us do updated information on those. So, to me, overall, and I know we can belabor this, and people have had, certainly experts have discussed this for the last year, but I think what I would like to see on the website would include the importance of natural immunity, which we're now seeing is now becoming more prevalent in the narrative, which is kind of what we've been saying for all along. What constitutes a breakthrough case? And these are types of things that people need to know for informed consent, that if we're not following the informed consent laws in this country, we're not giving people all of the information. We are sanitizing it. And again, it's just basically taking the information from OHA's website and from the governor's messaging, and we're not adding anything from Yamhill County. We might as well basically just put a link up there and give people the OHA website and not have anything in there, because for us to say as Yamhill County, these are safe and effective and there's really no problem. And I don't know, I'm finding this very frustrating. Okay. Sorry. Anyhow, I'm done.
Oh, no, Chair, I wanted to make sure I was next in line. Oh, Commissioner Starrett, I just wanted to make sure I was next in line. Thank you, Chair. I do want to note that I actually can't see any place where the HHS websites around COVID or the vaccines actually say safe and effective, which seems to be a change. And it's actually something that I would like to see returned. But I just want to clarify that, Chair, Commissioner, that I don't see that. But what I do see is a lot of Yamhill County specific information, because we have a director who lives here, we have staff who live here, we have staff and director who've listened to your concerns. I think that it's far from true that this is simply a link to the CDC or a link to the OHA. I do feel like this reflects the county understanding, county specific information.
I would love to see that. I would love to see what those specifics were. And the term safe and effective was on the website. I don't know if that was removed. Was that removed, Director Manfred? Because that was on there.
No one was instructed to remove it. I'm checking right now with our manager here, who's indicated that it is there, and I'm trying to find it. So.
Oh, sorry, Chair. Sorry,
okay.
Director.
I don't see it
I don't see it on any of the pages that I looked at today.
I agree. It was there, and now the language has been changed to we strongly recommend that residents get the COVID vaccine. So I think it was changed, unless I'm just looking at the wrong page. But
it's on the COVID information page, not on the vaccine information page. There's a statement near the header about the recommendation,
where it says safe and effective.
Mm-hmm. So if you go to the COVID coronavirus information page.
Thank you, I found it.
And just below the picture. Yep.
Okay, good. I was looking at the COVID vaccine page.
I'm not seeing that language. I'm seeing what Commissioner Starrett described earlier, which is getting vaccinated prevents severe illness, hospitalization, and death.
I would be happy to screen share, or perhaps, well, I can't put a link in. I can send a link to you all, but okay. So if you go to, trying to figure out where did I get here from? Okay, so go to it's the main COVID vaccine page for linked. Yeah, if you go to the main COVID vaccine page. Yeah, sorry, this is hard to do verbally.
Yeah, no, I saw your screen share, and that was the same page I was on. I guess okay. I'm just, I think if I'm understanding Commissioner Starrett correctly, the concern is over the statement that the vaccines prevent illness or death. That's a pretty strong statement. Maybe we tweak that a little bit and soften it to satisfy that, because obviously vaccinated people have died from COVID. So, but I was going to follow up on first of all, a couple of the proposals, well, both of the proposals had strengthened language on natural immunity and posting information about natural immunity and studies that are going on. The most recent one I read was actually done on vaccinated people, and it was very strongly the notion that natural immunity in conjunction with the vaccine was very strongly associated with surviving the virus or weathering the virus easier. So even among the studies with vaccinated people, natural immunity continues to come forward as an important piece. So that's something that I think is, in terms of additions to the website, I think that would be beneficial. Christian, we were talking about liability earlier. I'm not aware of any OHA rules or laws around us posting specific information about vitamins or supplements. If I'm wrong about that, I'm wrong, but I'm not aware of it. And so what I would propose is really the same tactic that Macon County took, which is it seems like a member of their Board of Health authored the recommendations, and their name is on it as the source, their contact information is on it as the source. So there seems to be a bit of, there's direct accountability for it because they serve on the Board of Health, but there's also a bit of a separation so that if there are questions, that individual is willing to take those questions and answer questions. So I'm wondering if that's kind of a happy medium for us in terms of concerns or legal liability, if that's something that we would be willing to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think another thing that might be helpful is if, and this is a question for Director Manfred, if there are some specifics coming out of this that maybe it would be beneficial to get some further input from our own Board of Health. So to give them the opportunity to come to a similar or a different conclusion about whether or not our Board of Health would feel comfortable making recommendations that another county's Board of Health has said they would be comfortable making. I think that would be important input to this conversation and to the ultimate decision about whether or not they and Director Manfred think it would be appropriate for the county to add to the public health webpage.
Okay. Yeah, the thought crossed my mind in terms of protecting the county from potential liability, but obviously a Board of Health member would have to be willing to author that and sort of sponsor that advice. But I also think that, the necessary disclaimers would have to come as well. And I'm not trying to do that in an effort to tell our residents that if you take vitamin C, you will be prevented from getting COVID. That's not the case. I'm doing that because one, it helps your immune system prepare for the virus. Two, it helps you heal through the process while you're sick. And as we're seeing with long COVID patients, these vitamins and supplements are absolutely critical for healing their body as they come out of severe cases of it. So that's really my purpose behind pushing that. I do think there's ways we could do it where it's not, Yamhill County says you should take, 50 milligrams of zinc every day, where it's more of a, perhaps a member of the Board of Health authoring some type of one-pager that says, here is some basic benign dosages and recommended vitamins and supplements. Here's why. Here's what they do for specific symptoms of COVID. And maybe that's the happy medium for us. So let's explore that. I'm still stuck on the pulse ox and the thermometer. I really would like us to have more specific information about why those are important, because I wouldn't have gone out and spent $40 on a pulse oximeter if I didn't know why it was so important for my family to have that. So I think that's a critical piece for me is making sure those things are in your home in preparation, because like I said, once you're sick, you're scrambling and it's not fun. And then besides that, we've had a lot of discussions about the vaccine page and the information. I think for me, my biggest issue on that is just the information about natural immunity and making that a little bit more robust. so that there is more of a balance of information. But I'm happy with all of the other changes. It was really wonderful to see. I was going through my list of my proposal, and a lot of them I checked off the list. So really happy to see that, and thank you for that work. Commissioner Kula?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As regarding whether a Board of Health member feels comfortable or not, I'm not really interested in what one Board of Health member feels comfortable writing down. I want something to come as a vote from the Board of Health, which is why I originally asked that this information be presented to the Board of Health. But again, that's one person, and which one do we choose in this regard? If somebody says, well, I like this dose, you know, who are we deciding on? It's the Board of Health rather than any one individual. Regarding what you're calling natural immunity, which I would just say is immunity, even if somebody hasn't had the vaccine, there is information. And if Director Minford wants to screen share again, she can show you there's information on getting the vaccine versus having never had the vaccine, but having contracted COVID in the past. And I think that that's sufficient.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. Commissioner Sterrett, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. I think we're finding more and more information, which is even becoming mainstream in the prevailing narrative about natural immunity, and I believe we need to focus on that. Some of the concerns, again, about the statements we're making on the website. The statement is, what are the benefits of the vaccine? And the vaccine has been shown to prevent COVID-19. Well, the CDC isn't even making that claim. They're only saying that the vaccine will lessen symptoms. Okay, so I think we have to be clear, because I believe that's misleading. The other thing is our consent form. It's not an informed consent form. It's basically a medical sign off. So in other words, informed consent is going to put in their information that we now have about the statistics about the vaccine, about breakthrough, about prevention versus lessening of symptoms. So if people are looking for our website to be trustworthy, then I think we need to be removing some statements that are patently either misleading or just accidental. Like, what are the benefits of the vaccine? The vaccine has been shown to prevent. So people realize now that it's not preventing them from contracting the virus or spreading the virus. Again, I believe it's important for us, prevention, treatment, all that information. But what I'm more concerned about is that we remove misleading statements that will just basically lead people to believe, when we say safe and effective, when we say we'll prevent contracting or spreading, those are the types of statements I think really do bring us into a position of liability. And I think we need to be aware of that as more and more people are starting to, look towards other sources besides, government-sponsored websites. They're starting to see, wait, the data is belying what we're seeing on government websites. So again, I'm just looking for us to be above the fray and to be a little bit better than the average OHA directive. Thank you.
And Chair, if I may, the CDC does say that COVID-19 vaccines are effective at preventing illness, infection, and death. That's a direct quote. If you probably what you're referring to is the main page on it, and if you scroll down 1,000 words or whatever 500 words, you'll see that. So I just want to clarify for the record that the CDC still says that in their official guidance.
And the statistics are showing that the breakthrough cases in largely vaccinated populations, I mean, just look at what's going on in Israel, the most vaccinated population in the entire world, and what their breakthrough stats are. So I think people—
I'm not disputing, Chair or Commissioner. I'm just saying that that's what the CDC website says, their official guidance right now, which is opposite of what you said.
Well, it's not, in that they're now saying that it is a treatment, not necessarily a preventative, which is becoming clear. So
Chair, I'm sorry, Commissioner, it says COVID-19 vaccines are effective at preventing illness, hospitalization, and death. That's just a direct quote. I'm reading it right now.
All right.
Thank
And
you.
the comment about treatment now is in addition to that. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. So I guess going forward, I'm looking for a game plan. So a lot of the things that were brought up in the Board of Health, and I have to thank Commissioner Sterrett for putting that together and bringing that conversation forward, because I think it produced a lot of wonderful conversation, you know, not just from the health community, but from people in our county who are dealing with this in real life. And it's, you know, they don't have all of this expertise. And so I thank Commissioner Sterrett for doing that. It brought forth a very important conversation that we're having. Thank you, Dr. Manfred, for making some of those changes and being responsive. That was wonderful to see that on the website. I think going forward, we have had some clear issues kind of rise to the top of this discussion. One of them around natural immunity, one of them around, you know, potentially how we're phrasing some of the vaccine information, you know, language about pulse oximeter and thermometer, and then also an idea or a way where we could potentially have some more specific recommendations on not only preventative vitamins, but also vitamins and supplements that would be sort of ramped up on if you are currently sick. And so rather than having any sort of directive, that doesn't feel right. But perhaps Director Manfred can kind of take this back and work through some of it and come back, you know, next week or when it's convenient. But let us know thoughts, maybe talking with your department heads or folks that are handling this kind of stuff, and let us know how they feel about those changes or some ideas that come forward. Is that Commissioner Sterrett?
I would just say we received a significant amount of public comment on this, and I was reading through some of them, and I have to say I've never seen there were some really good ones, but I do want to comment and say that I've never seen the level of profanity and threats that I've seen in some of the emails from people who were upset about just bringing this conversation forward about including more information. They were disturbing. I have never seen anything like that. There were threats and some pretty horrible narratives. So while that's happened, it's pretty upsetting that would be coming from folks who were opposed to this. What I have seen is some really good information, from some credentialed people, as I mentioned, naturopaths and medical doctors, but also just from the general public who are saying, hey, what about this? What about that? And making comments. So my recommendation for our director, and just to take a look at the breadth of that. It's very instructive, and I think it should be part of the narrative, you know, about what people are looking for and what people are looking to us for. So I would say it's a lot, but maybe just scroll through those if you get a chance and look at what some people are asking us to include. Thank you.
And then I will say that I'm not really clear about what you are directing, both the two of you are directing Director Manfred to do, but I would say that, again, I want to see any recommendations go through the channels that we've set up here in the county. We have advisory committees. People bring things before that advisory committee. If the advisory committee then chooses to make that recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, let's keep it in that pathway. So again, if you have recommendations, you want to see changes, go to Board of Health as a first stopping point. I recognize that this is, you want the HHS to change things more than Board of Health does. But again, I'm asking you just to bring it before them. So thank you.
Well, Commissioner Kula, we did that. And I think that there wasn't a directive out of that. And Public Health took it upon themselves to actually be responsive, which is what's wonderful. I don't know that we need a directive. I think Director Manfred is hearing some of these high level things that are still concerns, and what I'm hoping for is that we come back together maybe in a week and discuss some ideas around those. You know, how can we alleviate those without creating directives? I don't think that's necessary, and I actually think there was a lot of good work that came out of the Board of Health meeting. but we certainly did go that route.
And I'm saying that I don't agree with the comments that you've made, and you want Director Manfred to change. And so if there's like a motion or something, like, I want to see are we directing staff to do something right now?
We're asking staff to help alleviate some of the issues that are still there that came out of the Board of Health discussion and the subsequent changes. Director Manfred, is that how you are interpreting this? You know,
if I could weigh in or just kind of join, because, you know, I know Director Manfred is here and we've had the discussions and it's really involving with the department, but I'd be remiss, you know, I'm hearing the discussion and what the board would like, you know, as far as, you know, for staff to look at. And it's something, just a reminder, I work for the board, you know, so any directives that come from the board, you know, to me, and then I can have those conversations with the director, and based on the conversations and the feedback, I would like an opportunity to sit down and meet with Lindsay, and so then we can come up with a strategy on how best to approach, and I'd be happy to come back and report to the board on that.
I think that sounds great, commissioners. Okay.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Director Manfred.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Great to go through the website like that in detail, so I really appreciate that. Okay. Is there any further discussion on this particular agenda item? No? Okay. Thanks, everyone. Okay, let's see. I have an old agenda, so I'm trying to, let's see. Okay, so item I4, consideration of a letter regarding agricultural overtime mandate legislative proposal. This is one that I added, but I actually requested, I believe last night, to move it to next week. The letter that I was putting together is not quite where I want it to be. So let's move it to next week. Do we need a motion for that, Christian? Or we just, okay.
That's another one.
Chair.
If there's consensus, it's okay to do that.
Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda for next week. I appreciate that. Item I5 is discussion of Oregon Department of Transportation ODOT repayment regarding the Yamhill West Sider Trail. I put this one on, but it was sort of a placeholder for the next item. So if I have consensus, we'll just skip to the next item because it's the same thing. Okay. So let's see.
Chair, I was hoping that there was the same thing.
Right, okay, I need to pull up the agenda here. Hang on just a second. Okay, so item I6 is consideration of approval of a grant repayment agreement for repayment of Connect Oregon 6 funds in the amount of $687,532.78 to be paid in 3 equal annual installments of $229,177.59, starting on February 15th of 2022 and subject to final review and approval of County Council's office. So Christian, did you want to kind of give us a quick overview of this? We have it in the packet, but if you want to kick that off.
Yeah, and to be completely clear, it's actually 59 cents in 2 of the years, and 1 of the years is 60 cents for all of those math folks out there doing the math and realizing that we may be off by a penny. But I put it in there as 59 cents. So this agreement that's in the packet reflects the proposal that the board asked us to make to ODOT late last year as a proposal for repayment of the Connect Oregon 6 grant funds. The agreement largely reflects what we proposed. If the payments are made as provided in the agreement, there is no interest. And this also accomplishes the goal of spreading those payments out over 3 fiscal years. So for all intents and purposes, it reflects what we had proposed to ODOT.
Commissioners, any comments, discussion?
So this has no, I'm sorry. Started talking without
Oh, no,
getting
go ahead.
permission. Chair, I have a
Alright.
question. Mother, may I? Christian, a question about this, no interest on this, correct? These are no
Well,
interest.
as long as we are making the payments and we are not otherwise in default, there is a provision that says if there is an event of default, then interest will accrue. I think it says 9%.
Okay, thank you.
Ken, I know that we transferred this money in its entirety to be available to go out the door. If we make the first payment in February, what fund is the rest of it sitting in? And is it just sitting there for 2 years? Does it earn interest? I mean, what is that?
So the funds, because we did do a transfer of funds into Fund 40, which is the capital reserve fund where the project, where this original project was funded. We do have the funds there fully appropriated to be in order to make the payments. It's not sitting in a reserve, but if we're not spending it, it's sitting in our LGIP account. And so we are technically, it's part of the total investment pool. But the funds are available and fully appropriated and able to make the payments as, you know, next month.
So commissioners, we had a long discussion, this was months and months ago, but regarding this repayment, and we felt that it would be better to space them out if ODOT was willing to. Is there any change of heart with that, where some people just want to get it off the plate and pay it back in full? There's no interest, so there's really no risk necessarily of us doing the payments. And obviously we would earn a little interest money on keeping some money in there. So is there any sort of hesitation now of doing this 3-year payment plan?
There's not a hesitation for me.
Okay. Commissioner Sterrett? Nope. Okay. Okay. Well, I think it's pretty clear about how I feel about the Yamhill West Sider Trail. And I was really hoping that we would have a ceremonial vote for those who voted to spend this money so they could vote to send it back. It's not something that I enjoy doing or am comfortable doing, but I will call for a motion for the repayment of the grant money to ODOT over a 3-year period. Do I have a motion?
Chair, I move that we approve the grant repayment agreement for repayment of the Connect Oregon 6 funds in the amount of $687,532.78 to be paid in 3 equal installments of $229,177.59 starting on February 15th, 2022, subject to final review and approval, County Council's office.
Thank you, Commissioner Sterrett. Is there any further discussion? Nope. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. And that brings us down to the prior old business item, which is consideration of approval of a letter of support to be submitted to the Public Health Accreditation Board for public health re-accreditation. And again, this was continued from January 20th of 2022. Commissioners, do you feel that you have the information that you need from Director Manfrin regarding the questions that we had last week? Do you feel like you've seen enough information, or do you have further questions? Commissioner Sterrett?
Thank you, Chair. I was involved in the actual accreditation process 5 years ago or so, and it was a very involved process. It was something that took the Health and Human Services staff hours and hours and hours to do. It was very involved, and it was very, very detailed. This is, again, there was still the reaccreditation process is not quite as involved in terms of the actual on-site interviews and things like that. But there was an enormous amount of work that went into putting this together and a lot of detail. The reason why I was suggesting that I would not be in support of sending that letter in is because not that it in any way diminishes the work that the Public Health Department and the Health and Human Services Department has done, but I feel that it is a way to say that we can do better when it comes to messaging the public health information we're giving people regarding COVID treatment and vaccines and all of that information, which is why I had concerns about signing this letter. And that was pretty much it.
Thank you, Commissioner Sterrett. Do you feel that the changes that have been made, around COVID-19 specifically, obviously, but in the discussion today, does that help with your hesitation? Is there anything further that you would want to see to get you to the point where we are going to support reaccreditation?
Well, I was encouraged by the changes that were suggested. I was encouraged by the work that has been done to try to get some of the community's concerns addressed on our website. I'm encouraged by our administrator and our Health and Human Services Director working on a collaboration to bring more balance. I appreciate that, at least that discussion going on. And I think that is pretty much what I was looking for. Again, a lot of work went into this, and I acknowledge that. And that was the reason why I wanted to hold this up. So I feel encouraged, and I feel that I'm appreciative of it. And so I would be in, I'd be in support of this letter now. I wasn't before, but I do feel some hope that we're at least making some progress. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do think that there's a lot of tentacles into this discussion that relate to the previous discussion we had in the work session, which is concerns around an overarching messaging strategy, how we get messages out to the public that are critical. And I keep hearing that over and over in a lot of the discussions that we have. So that's definitely something that I'm looking forward to working on with Mr. Morgan. So Commissioner Kula, you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, Chair, I think that we should approve the accreditation letter and submit it. I think that it didn't need to have a conversation where you push Director Manfrin to change things on a website that she doesn't want to change. But given that, I'm in approval of this letter.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. I actually appreciate Director Manfrin's willingness to work with us. I didn't see any hesitation. I saw an immediate response, especially after the Board of Health discussion. So I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to call for a motion to approve. I guess now it's item I7. Do I have a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Okay, motion on the floor. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to public hearings. We have none. And announcements. Commissioners, do you have announcements for this week?
Chair, I primarily have one, and that on the as you know from being on the Jobs Council with the Willamette Workforce Partnership, there's the Workforce Partnership and Kim, the director, have been working for a long time on getting more funding for like more effective workforce training. And so the Racial Justice Council, the Workforce Partnership, I forget what it's called, the umbrella organization, and the governor's office have a bill that's in process of being presented. And I look forward to following it, but it has significant amounts of money for doing the work that we see on the Jobs Council slowly but surely happening. But I also hope that with that, our workforce boards and our councils and the work they do will be more effective too. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that bill, and I'll be following it closely.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Kula. Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to let you know that we received an update from our Health and Human Services Director, Manfred, regarding the Sheridan project. And as we know, this has been in the works for a number of years, and there are folks that are going to be moving into phase 1, I believe next month, as early as next month, which is very exciting. And I look forward to the plan is to have a tour out there when the weather gets better and when we're able to get folks together again to see what it looks like, because we were out there when the initial site was developed. And what's so wonderful about it is it's right across the street from a community of older people who would benefit from having that, so that co-generational relationship with folks that are in recovery. And there's probably nothing more healing than that family generational type of nurturing. And I think it's just a wonderful idea, and I hope we do more of it.
Thank you.
And there might be a virtual ribbon cutting, I hear.
Sounds great. I just have a couple of things. So the fair board met, and at this point we have no fair ambassadors. So those scholarships, it's $1,000 scholarship if you're a junior or a senior to become a fair ambassador. And the scholarships go directly to your school of choice, whether it's a trade school or a college or a community college. So those are out there. I believe there's at least 3 of them. I think we have up to 4. So spread the word on that. We do communicate with schools directly and school counselors, but for some reason or whatever, we just have not had anyone apply. So $1,000 is $1,000. That was a lot of money back in my college days. So let's help get the word out for the fair. They did post something on their Facebook page, so there's something to share if you want to go on there and share it. And I just have to note, someone told me to, because I don't watch the news very much, but someone told me to look up a Facebook page called Convoy to Ottawa. So I looked it up, and it says Convoy to Ottawa to 2022, and I think it's up to about 700,000 people on this page, and it is essentially a trucker rally. There's over 100,000 trucks that are on the way to Ottawa to promote medical freedom and end the COVID mandates there in Canada. And I thought that was incredible. I encourage you to go look on it, because it brings on the emotion. I mean, there's Canadians that were standing in minus 25-degree weather on the side of the road just to have a chance to wave to these truckers. So really wonderful to see. And those messages certainly came through in a lot of our public testimony for today's meeting as well. So just pretty amazing to see. We've seen that here on a much smaller scale in Oregon, but I encourage you to take a look at it. I don't see it on the news media, and it certainly is worthy of noting. So Ken and Christian, do you have any updates for us this week?
I guess I was waiting to see if Christian wanted to go first. Just really quickly, some updates on American Rescue Plan. We do have information that's been posted about the nonprofit competitive grants. We have information posted to the website. That opens on February 7th. We're in the final process of, I think we have a final agreement that we're getting ready to send out to the grant award recipients for the water and sewer infrastructure grants. So we're hopefully going to be able to start processing those grant agreements. We're also in discussions right now with SEDCOR and Willamette Workforce Partnership, and we'll hopefully have a proposal to bring back to the board talking about the workforce development elements. And then the other item that I'm hoping to get on a on extensive discussions about the various grants. There's one area which really has to do with some of the internal services or those internal needs. And based on some updated Treasury guidance, I would like to come back and have a conversation on how best to handle. It's more of a budgetary action, but I would like to have the discussion with the board here in the next couple of weeks with a new approach to around the revenue replacement and some of the public health response. So, you know, so I don't think we necessarily have to get anything on the calendar, but hopefully I'll be able to come back to the board with something more definitive here in the next couple of meetings. And then the other thing is I'm still actively trying to work to get a little bit of delay, just capacity issues. We haven't opened the RFP for the rural broadband consultant yet, but I'm really striving to get that opened up this week. But again, we're running into a little bit of capacity issues. So, and so I just wanted to give a quick update on some of those things. Oh, and I have a treasury report that's due on Monday. So that's the other part too that I'm working on related to ARPA.
Great, thank you. And some of the feedback that we've gotten from city managers about the water and sewer grants is just awesome to see. They're just so excited to have that huge lift taken off their plates. And many have said that, you know, this will allow us to not raise local rates for years and years. So I love seeing that. That's wonderful. Christian, did you have anything?
Yeah, just one quick announcement. I'm happy to let the board know you've met her, but we have added a third attorney now. So welcome to Jody Gallahan. She joins us as an assistant county counsel too, from a similar position with Lynn County. So we're back up to 3 attorneys. So hopefully that will help with capacity and workflow. So if you haven't had a chance to swing by and say hello, please do. And you'll probably see her coming soon on an email, a Teams meeting, or hopefully meetings in person, Board of Commission meetings here in the not too distant future. So welcome again, Jody.
Welcome.
And Megan
Thank
as
you.
well.
That's it.
I got my first email from Megan, so she's rocking and rolling.
Yes, Megan.
Welcome, Megan, too. Okay, so it looks like, is there anything else for the good of the order? Nope. Okay. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and I'm going to close the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners meeting, formal and informal session for January 27th.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.